Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 10 years of law enforcement analysis experience. She is currently the Senior Police Analyst with Scottsdale Police Department. She volunteers for the IACA Conference Committee as a speaker coordinator. She studied theater in college, making her an actress turned analyst with a stop as a 911 dispatcher in between. Please welcome Brittany Willis. Brittany, how are we doing?
Hi, Jason. I'm doing well. Thank you. How about you?
I am doing great. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start from the beginning then. How did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
Well, as you mentioned, I was a theater major in college. Growing up, I have a family full of law enforcement officers. I think at one point in time, I counted, and I probably have 20 different people in my family who are officers or analysts themselves, actually. But I had always had a dream of becoming an actress and going on to great fame there. So that was my track for a while. In college, I went to University of Northern Colorado for theater. During that process, I actually fell in love with directing. One of my professors kind of singled me out and said that I had that eye and I had that skill. So that's where he wanted me to go. So of course, I changed everything I was doing as an actress and started working towards becoming a director. What's kind of cool about that is once I graduated college, moved home for a while, wasn't quite sure what to do. Thought of grad school kind of scared me at the time. Didn't really want to move to LA or New York, and I couldn't really make a determination there. But the professor I was working with had called me and asked me what I was doing. And when I told him nothing, he sent me into directing, got me a job, got everything lined up for me, ended up moving back to Colorado, worked as a director for quite a bit of time there. And right at that time that I was about to sign on with the company I was working with, which of course would start me getting paid as a director, I had a quarter life crisis and realized that I didn't necessarily want to do that anymore. I wanted stability. I wanted to be able to have a family and have a home. And for me, that just the life that was for me, it wasn't the life I wanted. So moved back to Arizona and was kind of at a loss for what to do. My cousin, who is a current analyst with the Arizona Department of Public Safety, talked to me a lot about what she did. I was always kind of a math nerd, which was a little off for the theater world, but I fell in love with what she did. She suggested that I go take classes. And at the time we had a program with our Chandler Gilbert Community College that was a crime and intelligence analysis course. And it was a certificate program. She suggested I kind of go back and see if that was something I would be interested in. So back to school I went, ended up taking a few classes and fell in love. It combined the creative aspect that I so needed in my life with the stability and math, which I'm still a little bit of a math nerd. I love Excel, love playing around with formulas and all of that. So it was kind of the perfect marriage of both of the aspects that I wanted in life. Ended up completing the school and talked to several people in my family who all said I needed to get hired in law enforcement somewhere because, of course, this field is not very easy to get into. And they all recommended that I just start looking around for law enforcement jobs, no matter what it was. So I started applying for anything and everything I could. I applied for records specialists. I applied for admin positions. I applied for being a 911 dispatcher. And lo and behold, I ended up getting a job with Phoenix Police Department as a dispatcher.
But let me get some follow-up questions before we get too far down the rabbit hole here. So I'm fascinated by the quarter life crisis. How old were you when this was happening?
24, I I think.
Yeah.
24. So
I find that fascinating in the fact that you were brave enough to make a change, right? I think a lot of folks, given that situation, I think maybe most of us in our mid-20s, maybe we're just starting out first couple years in our first career. And there's always, I think, a little bit of doubt that this is right for us. We might all go through something in our mid-20s, like a fork in the road. Should I just keep on going or should I make a hard turn? And so I find it fascinating that this happened to you. You're on the doorstep of being a director and you had enough forethought to look down the road to see what path you were about to take and decided, you know what, this isn't for me. For our listeners, maybe some advice or lessons learned or what your process was of how you decided to change.
Well, to start, the family I grew up in, like I said, everyone was in law enforcement. So there was always a part that just kind of assumed that's what we would all do. We were born and bred this way. So for me to take the step out to follow my dreams, that was the brave part. That was the part of my life that at the time, I was kind of a little bit of the black sheep because I'm not just falling into the law enforcement career to go and try theater and to go do it. And for me, when I finally got that opportunity, it wasn't what I expected. And it wasn't what I had dreamed and envisioned. So for me, it was a challenge to then, here's everything that I have ever wanted since I was a very little girl. I wanted to be in this theater world. So it was definitely a challenge to take a step back from that and to really decide, no, this isn't what I want to do. But at the same time, I did it and I tried it and I will never have those regrets. I will never look back on my life and wonder what if. And I think that's the part that so many people get hung up on is here's something that they want to do and it's big and it's scary and I don't know if I can, but honestly, you just need to do it. You just need to take the leap and jump out there and trust, in your support system. And I'm very lucky. I have a very wonderful support system. My family is very, very close and I knew I was going to have them to fall back on. So being able to take that leap to try my dream was awesome. I did it knowing that I'd have people there to catch me if I fell, but also I was kind of raised where you have to do what you want to do and you needed to go try it. It's kind of funny. My mom she's retired now, was a sergeant with our Arizona Department of Public Safety. And she got hired at a time where females weren't employed as officers. She was one of the first 5. And for her, that was a big thing for her, was to push us to do what we wanted to do. Even being as strict and straight and narrow as she is, she understood that that was my dream. So she pushed me to go do it because she didn't want me to live my life with regrets. Being able to do that was awesome. Taking the step back from that, it was very hard because I felt like I was going to disappoint everybody who believed in me. I was going to disappoint everyone who was pushing me to go accomplish my dreams and go and do it. It was a conversation that I had with my mom about stepping back and understanding that nobody had put these expectations on me except myself. And I think as analysts, we're all overthinkers. We all tend to put these expectations of we have to be perfect. We have to get things right. So understanding that it's okay to not. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to try something and fail. That was kind of huge for me to be able to accept that I wasn't going to be disappointing somebody by having my dreams change. And I really had to wrap my mindset around that because I was doing my dream, but it was no longer my dream. I think for people out there who are in their mid-20s and looking at their life, it's very hard to really take a step back and think about what are my dreams? How do I want to accomplish my dreams? And for those people who are struggling with that, I absolutely go do whatever you can. And more than that, don't let anybody tell you you can't. As a side note, when I was looking to get into the analyst field, I had gone on a sit-along, so to say, with another analyst with another department. It was within our first 20 minutes of talking that she looked at me and said, yeah, well, you're never going to be an analyst. And interesting, there was some other aspects at play there, but she told me I was never going to be an analyst. And I made that my goal to prove her wrong. And it's been a very wonderful pleasure of mine to be able to have taught several classes here locally in Arizona, or just in conversation with people, being able to express the things I've done and the things I've worked on here with Scottsdale. I have taken a very negative delight in being able to have taught her and being able to prove to not only her, but myself that I reached my goals and I accomplished my goals. I didn't let anybody tell me I couldn't, and I didn't let anybody keep me from doing it. It's funny, from the theater world, I still am in contact with some people, and through Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, and seeing the people who I went to school with going on to do big, great things. There are several of them who are in TVs and are in movies and are doing that. And, I'm so proud of them for being able to do that. And I have to look back at myself and kind of go, you know what? Yes, I miss it a little bit, but I did it. I tried it, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. And what I was able to accomplish instead is so much better for me personally.
Thank you for that very honest answer. I appreciate that. All right, so let's move on. I do want to talk a little bit about you being a 911 dispatcher.
Oh, yes.
Just the things that you learned there that helped you be a good analyst.
Oh, well, there's several, and there's several of us analysts who are prior 911 dispatchers who we all kind of talk our war stories from being dispatchers. I can throw out Albert there for that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Albert Mesa, yes.
Albert Mesa, yes. It's a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I learned, first and foremost, how to deal with difficult people. I think that is the biggest struggle that you deal with any 911 job. Where I work specifically, it is the major hub for the state of Arizona, Phoenix PD, and all 911 calls will be routed to there if an emergency happens. We had a very large contingency of dispatchers there, and it was great having that opportunity to work there. But you have to learn to keep yourself calm in any situation. Currently, where I work with Scottsdale, sometimes we get brought out on the scene. Sometimes we're dealing with difficult options and photos and listening to things. And you have to be able to remain calm and focused throughout the entirety of what you're doing. And that was definitely a skill I took from being a dispatcher, is kind of being able to prioritize what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And then, there's just specific things that you learn. You learn how calls are even taken. You learn what makes a priority call. You learn how officers are responding to it. And even things from, in our dispatch center, we had an address that it didn't exist, but any call that came in that was a hang up that we couldn't follow up on, or even just I'm giving somebody information, it went to this non-existent address. From when I came over to Scottsdale, I took that knowledge with me. And as I was looking at our calls for service reports that we give, all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh, hey, which addresses do we have that are non-existent addresses that are going to be your top calls? That's going to be your top caller location, but it's a non-existent address. And so we were able to work within the system to figure out what address all of these would show up at. And then more importantly, sometimes an address would come over as the cell tower, and that cell tower might actually have another address that exists. So how do we fix that? So where when I'm giving a top caller report, I can very specifically say, okay, well, let's take this one out. And let's take this one out. So it has helped me in that way as well.
If you have the call and there's no address,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I understand the aspect of if it's to the cell tower and the cell tower information can house a different address. I understand that. But is that the only way, or how else would you identify the address if there's no address on the call record?
Well, it really depends on, and granted, let me preface this. This was 911 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
So things are drastically different now. Technology has improved. So I know now they might do things differently. At the agency I worked for, and at the time I worked for it, we had essentially phase 1 or phase 2 technology where if somebody called in and we didn't have an address for where they were, we could try to relocate and refresh all of our data that we were getting. So we produced an address. But I was talking more of those calls that, I'm calling in on the non-emergency line and I need the number to animal control. Every call had to go in at an address. Well, I'm not going to necessarily ask the caller, what's your address, when all I'm doing is providing a contact information. So I would just give it a nonsense address. But with Phoenix, we had one address that was used for all of that. So any of those calls that you didn't necessarily need to dispatch an officer to. It was just, I'm giving you the information over the phone. We would use that address. And it was something that we had just trained on there.
I also see that not only were you a dispatcher for Phoenix, you also volunteered in the crime analysis research unit while you were dispatching. So what kind of things did you do as a volunteer?
Oh, as a volunteer, I produced a lot of their reports. A lot of the times when we had citizens call in and they wanted a calls for service report for a specific address, I would run that report for them. Things that were pretty easy, but you couldn't screw it up. And since I was already vetted, I was already current Phoenix police employee, I knew that in trying to get into the analyst world, I was going to have to get experience. Something that, I always used to say was that I found that it was a lot easier for somebody who was fresh out of college with a criminal justice degree to get hired as an analyst than for somebody who had had another career and didn't necessarily have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. So I knew I needed to volunteer. So I was willing to do whatever I could. There was a lot of people I learned from with Phoenix. There was a lot of people that I studied under and tried to just soak up as much knowledge as I could. Sam Palmer was one of the people who taught me there, Renee Brookman, and I'm going to butcher her last name, I apologize, but Maravik. And there were so many people with Phoenix PD that just taught me as much as they could. And I was willing to soak up whatever it was. So I did a lot of district reports, very simple things, but Greg Miracle with Phoenix at the time, he had taught me some mapping skills. I had been going through our Chandler Gilbert class at the time as well. And Brian Hill, of all people, taught my mapping class. Side note story of Brian. I walked into class the first day and I look like my parents. I'm my mother's mini me, but if you put me next to my dad, I look exactly like him as well. And so I walk in that day and Brian Hill points me out and he was like, "Steve Willis is your dad." And I was like, "Yes, yes, he is." And he goes, "Well, I don't like him." And I was kind of like, okay. And I know that because they had this horrible animosity towards each other. My dad used to be a motor officer and he was the stereotypical motor officer. I mean, think Chips, where it's the mustache and the glasses and the attitude. Like that was my dad. Brian Hill finally was like, "Well, if Steve Willis is your dad, is Debbie Willis your mom?" And I was like, "Well, she's my stepmom and I love her." And he goes, "Well, I like her." He goes, "But that means that Carrie Jonovich is your mom." And I was like, "Yes." He goes, "I hate her too. So you're going to fail the class." And so Brian and I had this love-hate relationship. He finally realized I'm not either one of my parents and I was my own person. So he finally decided that he would kind of take me under his wing and teach me, which was awesome. But between Brian Hill and Greg Miracle, like I learned a lot of mapping skills there. It was awesome. It was a great opportunity for me.
Yeah. So Brian Hill was very opinionated.
So he was.
Yes. So then when you go on and you start at Scottsdale as an analyst, what's the learning curve like? Maybe something that surprised you coming in that you didn't expect?
I struggled when I came to Scottsdale. Number one, I think at the time, I had a very hard time going from such a high volume, fast paced environment that was dispatch. I had worked a swing shift, so it was the busiest time of day and you were nonstop all day long. And so I had a very hard time going from that environment to a very, okay, things go slow. At the time with Scottsdale, we were doing a lot of different things that we weren't doing now. My job specifically was very numbers based. It was very report based. I would clean data at the time. We were using Bear Analytics software and we're using Attack. We still are. But we would go through and have to clean our data and clean the reports and spent a lot of time doing just what seemed like busy work. It was very hard for me to step back and understand, okay, this moves slower. I don't need to make a decision right now because it's a life and death decision.
Like getting off the highway.
It really was. And it's like getting off the highway, not just going on a city street. It's like taking a country dirt road all of a sudden. It was a very hard time for me, but I had great trainers. Obviously, Mike Winslow was a fantastic trainer, Mary Bertuccelli being a fantastic supervisor who really kind of helped me. I made it known to both of them in our conversations that, okay, I am a gold star person. I will do anything to get my gold star. I want my 100% and I want that. So for me, it was like anything that you can give me, I'm here, I'm willing. And, they both did a great job. They both were able to kind of help me fall into what we did here at Scottsdale, really helped me grow. I would have several meetings with Mary about, okay, this is where I see myself going. This is my career path that I see myself going. So any training that you can get me, any projects that you can give me, I wanted something that I could call my own and that I could kind of move forward and go through that. So it was a great opportunity for me, but it was a struggle. I think the biggest thing as well is, especially being a dispatcher for Phoenix Police, you're aware of everything that goes on across the entire valley. If there's an officer involved shooting in any city, you're aware of it. You're aware of any major incident that happens across the entire state almost immediately. And coming to Scottsdale, something would happen. And because you're not in it immediately, and at the time we weren't, at the time our unit wasn't, and a few years ago, our unit has changed drastically with what we do and how we do it. But at the time when I started, we weren't as completely inundated with everything. So something would happen and I'd see, I'd get a text from one of my dispatch friends about, oh, did you see this officer involved? I'd be like, what? No, that happened. Hold on. It was who, and it was weird to not be in the know, so to say. Mm-hmm. Things have changed over time. And specifically with our unit, we are brought in on investigations now right from the get-go, which is awesome. So we are far more in the know now than we were when we started. But yeah, that was an interesting step back, so to say.
Well, let's get into your badge story then. And
yes.
So your analyst badge story, those that are new to the show, the analyst badge story is the career-defining case or project that the guest has. So yours I find unique because yours involves a particular type of visual, I'll call it. Your first one begins with fraud. So let's just talk about your badge story.
Well, mine is, as you're saying, it's kind of unique, kind of out there. I'll just start with the case. I had a detective who was a fraud detective, and she came in and was venting about how she wasn't able to prosecute this case correctly because in her case, we'd had a suspect and he was stealing credit cards, and then him and his girlfriend were going into some of the higher end suites and hotels, and they were blowing up the credit cards and, charging anything and everything to their rooms and getting all sorts of spas and room service and all of that. And then they'd be out the door before the hotel realized that, oh, hey, this is fraudulent activity here. And then they'd be in the wind and they couldn't find her. Or find him. So she ended up finding our suspect, did a search warrant on the hotel, and he had stuff all throughout the hotel. They had pictures from the search warrant, but one of the things that they discovered that they were struggling with is if the picture was from the doorway into the room, you couldn't necessarily see all the items that were on the desk or on the chair or on the bed or any of that and where they were in relation to each other. His defense, he ended up throwing his girlfriend under the bus, said it was all her, and he never came into the room. He walked in, dropped his bags, and then out he left. Our prosecutor was having a hard time with that. So in talking to her, it dawned on me, well, why don't I make you a floor plan of the hotel room? And then we could have numbers and bubbles. That way, when you're going through the case in front of the prosecutors, you could click on the number one and here's the results of your search warrant, and up pops pictures of what you found on the desk. And then you click back into it. So she was like, well, that might work. So we tried it. I ended up getting all of her search warrant photos, went through all of them and drew up a floor plan to the best that I could. I, of course, used good old Google and tried to figure out if I could get a floor plan of the hotel suite, was able to do so. And this one wasn't to scale, but it was great for her because in prosecution, as I said, like she'd click on, well, here's the chair and here's a number one, and up pops pictures of everything she found on the chair. And then, okay, now here's the bedside table. But you could see where it was at in the room. And it went over wonderfully. She ended up getting successful prosecution there.
I'm trying to visualize this as you're talking here. So the male suspect then, his original story was that he came in and just dropped something off. How did your floor plan change that narrative?
Well, this is probably 6 years ago now, so I may be a little bit wrong. I believe his DNA or his fingerprints, and I can't remember which one, items that were on, or his DNA or fingerprints were on these items. So showing the floor plan, you could see that he didn't just enter this entryway, drop his bags and leave. You found items that he's touched and handled and had with him all across the room and into, it was a 2-bedroom suite for this hotel. So he didn't just go into this entryway. He had items in the kitchen. He had items in the office. He had items in the bedroom, and his stuff was everywhere, but it painted a better picture of that because you could see the totality of it. It looked a lot differently to visualize something like that on a floor plan. So then the narrative with her case became about, this just isn't realistic for somebody to put these items here. But when you saw it on a picture laid out, here's a floor plan, something that we're all used to looking at, anybody who's bought a house or any of that, you've probably looked at floor plans. It just showed a much better picture of what happened. So I took this unique thing and we ended up doing briefing trainings shortly after that. I was explaining to them, hey, here's what I've done that it worked well for this. And the point wasn't to use the floor planner again. It simply was, come to us if you guys need help, because we're creative people. We usually think outside the box, and we could hopefully find something that's going to work for your case, especially when you're struggling there. Well, shortly after that, we had one of our worst homicides that we've had to date. Our sergeant called me in, was like, hey, do you think you could do that floor plan thing that I saw in training for this? I was like, absolutely, cool. So he put me in touch with our crime scene services, and they gave me all of the measurements, actually. So everything that I did in the floor plan, as I did it, it was to scale. I went through picture after picture after picture, and it was all matching colors. It was, matching patterns, everything there was perfect with what it matched with. And it ended up being a really big case. It went cold for a few years and it made national news because we ended up changing some case law due to this. But what was pertinent about it is because it was such an awful homicide, we brought in a lot of agencies to help us with that. And one of the things that was very important for our agency was to not re-victimize the victim as they're showing pictures and describing the scene and describing what happened and all of the aspects of our case. They didn't want to necessarily show all of the video and all of the pictures that was horrible and traumatic and awful. So they would use my floor plan as they were showing new agencies, hey, here's what happened. And here's what we had here. And here's what we found here. And they would use that floor plan. So it came in really handy. It's now a tool that we use on any of our major cases. A few years back, we had a serial killer come to Scottsdale, and it was used with, our serial killer. And I've used it for sex assaults. I had one detective, she had a sex assault, but had multiple victims come forward. It had occurred in one of our high schools and had multiple victims come forward and talk about the sexual abuse that they had gone through as well. And in and of itself, each one of those sex abuse cases would not have prosecuted very well. So she wanted to try the entirety of that and look at all of the cases together because it paints a much different picture. So by using that, I combined our floor plan with a timeline and explained, okay, here's this date, which happened here, because at that point in time, like our suspect used one very specific location of the high school. He used that to terrorize his victims, so to say, by showing it on a floor plan, in addition to a timeline, which is something that a lot of analysts make. It just painted such a better picture. So it's kind of cool. It's definitely something that's different. Not a lot of people do. If you saw the 2019 conference back in DC, I presented a little bit on it as part of our homicide case studies. And I definitely had a lot of questions there. So as analysts, I would just say, make sure you are thinking outside the box. That's kind of what we're best at, and having something that had never been used before. I still haven't heard of a lot of people using it, but it's really helped in a lot of cases.
And you do realize that you are setting the stage. You are using your director's hat.
Yes, yes, I do, which is what I love about my job. So I do get to have this creativity, and I do get to still kind of use that part of my brain and show that off at the same time, which is one of the things I absolutely love.
So do you have any do's and don'ts or maybe some documentation or anything like that for our audience?
My advice would be talk to your case detectives. Explain if this is something you're wanting to do. Ask them maybe for a current case you're working on, and it doesn't have to be a homicide. Like I said, I did it for fraud. I've done it for sex assaults. I've done it for a lot of different cases at this point now. So talk to them, see if it's something that it might be of use to them to just help. And honestly, maybe even take it a step further and just do it and then present it to them and say, hey, this is what I can do. It really helps to get pictures. It really helps to be able to go through those scene photos or search warrant photos if they're available, so you can get a complete picture of what's going on. Read the case, read everything about the case, so you have an understanding of this is what happened and where it happened and how things might have looked. I try to match colors. I try to match the specific measurements to scale, obviously. The software that I use, at first, I used a free version that I found online. In researching it, once I did it for the second case that I worked on, it was $15 a year. So I went to my boss and was like, hey, can we buy this? Because it's $15. And that's not much. Don't use it on every case. So when it's been a while since I've used it, I go back in, I play around, see what's new, see what's different. Serial killer one, I had to go find pictures of people because I wanted the people to be in the positions that we found them in. So I scoured the internet forever trying to find something that matched. So take your time. Make sure that you are doing it justice. I could have just found somebody who was proned out and gone with that, but that's not what our case was. And I wanted to be able to paint the most accurate picture available. So I took my time with it, and I spent a lot of hours working on those, adding, bullets and blood and all of that sort of stuff.
So what's the name of the program?
Floor planner, actually. It's simple. Floor planner.
Apropos. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I do want to talk about the IACA Conference that we're all so very excited about this summer. And I do want to talk about your personal interest as a baker. You're listening to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Mary Bertuccelli. Would you like to solve a cold case? If your answer is yes, then enter a cold case from your agency into VICAP, the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. Thanks.
Hi, this is Matthew Smith, and I have a public service announcement. When you are walking in a building and somebody is coming behind you, please hold the door for them. Give them that common courtesy. And at the same time, if somebody is holding the door for you, just say thank you. It just drives me crazy when people don't say thanks. It's one of my pet peeves, and I think if we all just got along and said please and thank you, we would get a lot further in this society. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Angela Backer-Hines, and I just want to remind you to give yourself a break. As analysts, we strive to have all the officers in our department utilize our skills, and we typically want to be everything to everyone and do everything we can each day. But work is much more manageable and less stressful if you embrace the fact that it's okay to take some time for yourself, and maybe even to say no once in a while. In analysis and in life, you have to give yourself a break or you risk burning out, and then you're no good to anyone. So just remember, it's okay to give yourself a break.
Welcome back, Brittany. I want to talk about the IACA conference now. And
Absolutely.
So excited. Canceled it last year. Certainly understand why. And this year, it's in Vegas, Planet Hollywood, August 23rd through the 27th. Registration is going on now. The price goes up July 16th.
Yes.
But for you, you are a speaker coordinator. So you're in charge of getting all the different time slots filled in throughout the week in terms of speakers.
Yep, I sure am.
And we are sneaking up on the deadline, which is April 30th at, I always laugh at this, 11:59 Pacific Standard Time.
Yes.
So be sure
have to cut it off sometime.
Yeah, you do. But it's always 11:59 on that day. On April 30th. So I know you're excited. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. Thrilled. And so I let's just start with generally what you're feeling about this conference, and then we can talk about the call for presentations.
First of all, I am so excited. This conference is going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. We've been working really hard to plan such a great conference. This one's going to be different than all of the ones that have come before. So if what you're used to in a conference, throw that out the window. We're still going to have, of course, amazing training, amazing speakers. We're going to have a great time. There's some great events that we've got planned, which of course, when you register, make sure you RSVP to all of those events. You do want to come. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. But here's the fun part about it. We're all coming out of COVID. A lot of what we're doing is, well, we kind of have to go with the flow. And we all are under the assumption that we don't necessarily have things written in stone just yet. We understand that, there might be another outbreak of coronavirus, and let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope by the time August rolls around that anybody who is planning on getting their vaccine has their vaccine, and people are willing to come out and to have a great time at this conference, because it's going to be amazing. But it is definitely going to be different. We're a little bit more relaxed this year. We're a little bit more, let's go with the flow here. Let's just do what we can, and it's going to be great. And I think because of that, all of us who are planning right now are working our tails off to try to make this a great conference, because we understand that it's our 31st annual conference. And this is something that it's got to be awesome. And it's got to get those people back, because I think when people take a year off, they're kind of, training budgets might go away. And I'm sure every other agency like my own has taken a little bit of a hit from that. We're hoping that we're going to have a wonderful event, but I am thrilled. I am so excited this year. We just got done with an event planning session and last week, and it was just coming off of that. I am on cloud nine so excited for this. So it's going to be amazing.
Well, good. And I think you hit two of the whammies that I'm concerned about, which is obviously coming off COVID, and we're coming off of budget issues because of COVID. And then the third whammy that I'm usually concerned with when it comes to law enforcement conferences is that it's in Vegas.
Yes.
I do applaud the committee this year. They didn't try to fool us like they went to Henderson years ago.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't Vegas, right?
It wasn't. It really wasn't. And we heard about it. We heard that it wasn't Vegas last time that we were in Henderson. So it's going to be interesting this year. Vegas is, for our association, we understand it's a little bit of a leap, but one of the things that we were looking at is there are a lot of law enforcement associations that go to Vegas and go to hotels that are directly on the Strip. I know the Homicide Investigators Association has been there before. I believe IACP has even been there before. So there are plenty of other associations that have been there and have had successful conferences and a successful turnout for it. So we're taking the leap this year, but it's going to be a good one.
So are the evening activities published yet?
When you registered, there were 2 evening activities, I believe, that you could register for. One of them is going to be our Monday night welcome reception. And then a second one is going to be our Wednesday night social networking event.
Okay.
Now, both of those, we understand that we're asking people to come to Las Vegas and be on the Strip. People are probably going to want to go out on the Strip and enjoy their time. So both of those events are ending early enough where you would still be able to do that if that's your prerogative. However, they are 2 events that are not to be missed. I believe our Wednesday night one goes a little bit later, but here's the other part about it. We're going to have excellent giveaways, drink tickets and food and all of that. And Vegas is going to charge you for a lot of that. So for those of you who want to save your per diem, make sure you're coming to those events. And for those of you who don't really care and you're still going to go out on the Strip, come to our stuff first. And then make sure that you are done in enough time to get to class on time in the morning, because that's going to be excellent.
What are some of the COVID rules and restrictions that we should anticipate at the conference?
So with that being said, everything is still up in the air. Right now, from what we just found out, they are going to have another restriction check-in, so to say, at the beginning of May. And of course, that might change over the summer. Vegas itself had just opened up vaccines to those 16 and up. So that county that Vegas is in is seeing a lot of positive numbers. And by that, I mean that there's less and less cases, that they're seeing kind of that normalization and that slowdown. As far as our conference goes, when we were there, I could say, we had to wear masks in all of our buildings. We're planning for social distancing. We're planning for that to be able to happen accordingly with what's going to be requested of us. But that is one of the things that we don't have an exact answer to yet. This year, we are going to put out a pre-conference checklist. And with that pre-conference checklist, you will have all of that information that is the most up-to-date information that we have available to you. So you can understand if, you're going to be asked to wear a mask the entire time. You can be asked you can understand if you're going to be asked to sit away from people. But that might change between now and then. So we're not really wanting to put that out just yet because Vegas is still going to be going through a lot of these kind of different checkpoints to see what their rules are. So, we don't know yet. Going with the flow.
Good stuff there. And so let's get into calls for presenters. You talked about budgets and costs. One of the ways to curb the cost of the conference is to be a presenter.
Absolutely.
You get a conference fee waived. You get a hotel night stay for being a presenter. And so currently for IACA members, it's $500 registration that gets waived. For non-members, it's $575. The night hotel then is $99 plus tax would be $136 altogether that gets waived. So for being a presenter,
you get a good deal.
You get credited $637 for being a presenter.
Yes.
The presentation application this year is different.
It is. How we are submitting our presentations this year is you are having to use Cvent, which is a software program that we have used for many years with IACA, with our conferences. That's typically how we've done our registrations and all of our badging systems there. And the app is through Crowd Compass, which is a Cvent platform. But this year we decided to use it for our calls for presentation as well. It's been interesting. There's definitely been a learning curve for Danielle Martell. She's a speaker coordinator with myself as well. And for her and I, it's been an interesting learning curve. The biggest thing that we want to get out there is when you go to submit your presentation, you should be getting a pop-up that says log in now or create your account. Look for that create your account button because you do have to create an account. Now, the good thing about that is once you submit your presentation, say you want to get your presentation in by that April 30th cutoff date, but you're not really happy with your abstract as you have it written, which for those who've never done it before, your abstract is going to be that little piece of information that's going to help attract an audience to your class and why they should be coming to your class, what's going to make it awesome. And say you're not really happy about it. You think about it and you want to go back and change it. Well, now with Cvent, you can log back into your account and change that. Or you want to upload a different headshot, which everyone gets to see in the app if you're a speaker. Anything that you can make those little changes. So we felt like it was going to be more of a dynamic process to use this. It definitely coordinates a lot easier with the schedule and with registration. It just makes it a streamlined process. But there is that extra little step for our speakers who are submitting their presentations. They do have to create that account. So easy step. Don't worry about it.
So is it still an abstract of the presentation, which is just a couple of sentences, and then there's a bigger description as
Correct.
well? There's two. The abstract goes where, and then the bigger description goes where?
So the abstract is what's going to be seen on the app. That is going to be where everyone else gets to look at the schedule and decide which classes they want to see. They'll see that very short little blurb about this is what this class is about. The bigger description is going to be for Danielle and myself to then choose which training we're bringing. I personally think Danielle and myself do a very good job of making sure that we are bringing training that's going to apply to a lot of different people. The things that we're looking at, is it something that's going to be interesting and applicable, timely enough to capture the attention of our audience that we have? So that's your chance to really show off what your class is going to be about. But that is for Danielle and myself to look at.
And so that's not going to be published anywhere.
That should not be published, no.
Okay. That's good information then. So you and I have talked about this over the years. So you have the call for presentations. You get a variety of topics, a variety of speakers. And I will just add to the audience, if you've never presented at an IACA conference, don't be afraid, get out there. And they usually give priority to folks that have never presented before. But you get these ideas that come in for presentations, and sometimes it probably works out nicely where, okay, it fits. Everything that came in works for a schedule throughout the whole week. But then there's others where it's more of a targeted topic. So it's maybe from the previous conference, you got feedback that says, hey, no one talked about XYZ. Then how do you ensure that topic gets covered at the next conference?
Well, a few things. First of all, as you mentioned there, we do look for a wide variety of topics. And some of them, we want to make sure that it appeals to the most amount of people that we can get. So some of them are very broad, very, wide-reaching topics. Some of them are very specific. I can tell you that we ask everyone every year to do their speaker reviews. We ask everyone every year to do their classroom reviews of what the topics are. Those are items that we look at. We scour through those and make sure that we are truly soaking in all of the feedback that you guys give us. In addition to that, I know we walk around the conference as we're talking to people. Hey, what'd you think of this class? Hey, how did you think of this presenter? Me personally, I've got my notepad up on my phone and I am just typing furiously. So that way, when it comes time for planning our next conference, those speakers who we get rave reviews over, oh my God, I love them. They're fantastic. I could watch them read the phone book. We want to make sure that we get those speakers back because it's those great speakers who just can capture an audience, who bring the people into their classes. And I think those are great. But like you said, we like those first time speakers. We like giving people that opportunity. So we do take that into consideration. We look at all of the topics. Part of choosing the schedule is making sure that we don't necessarily repeat too many classes, but at the same time, one of the things that we worked real hard to change in our time as speaker coordinators is ensuring that we do have specific classes that are repeated throughout the week. And one of the reasons why is when you're looking at, here's my 9:00 hour of classes that I'm going to be attending. You have 6 options. We have one track that typically we try to get more general theory, research studies, that sort of stuff. We have another track that we look at very specific crime analysis. So whether it be statistics or some sort of pop project or something like that you've done. We have another track that we try to get more intel focused. So anything from case studies to CDRs and Google data, those intel, report writing, all of that sort of stuff. And then we have a bring your own computer track. All of those tracks, we really try to get people in to teach anything from Excel to Access. I can tell you, I'm also on the mentoring committee. Being on the mentoring committee, that is something that people are starving for knowledge of Excel and Access and automation and R. And it's something that not a lot of people teach. So I'm making my shameless plug here. If you teach Excel, Access, PowerPoint, even R, any coding, anything that's a computer related class, crystal reports, SPSS, all of that fun stuff out there, please consider putting in. Jason, I know you have presented quite a lot and you're kind of the go-to Excel guy, but it's great, as you said, to get those first-time presenters in there, give them a chance, give them that opportunity. So if that's something you teach, please, 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 please put in. We really want to get a lot of those classes because for me, specifically being on the mentoring committee and seeing what we have these new analysts coming in, asking for help with, and then being able to be on the speaker coordinator for the conference committee, I'm able to kind of combine the two and marry the two. And I talked to Kyle Stoker about here's webinars that are coming and here's who we think he should choose as a webinar in the training department. So to be able to combine all that and really have a good pulse of what our members are asking for. I will also say that anybody who would like to suggest a topic, we listen to that too. We've had several people talk about, hey, I want to see this year. And hey, if we get those requests, we really do try to accommodate because this is your conference. This is the conference for our members. One of the things that we love about this is nowhere else in the world are you going to get this amount of training for our field. And it's really a great opportunity for those who want to speak or who want to impart knowledge on it. I'd also urge people that you don't need to be an expert. Everyone can learn from anything if you really give it a chance. So If you are second guessing, well, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Well, talk about what you've learned. You've done something that maybe you made mistakes on, and okay, well, if I did it differently next time, here's what I would do. We can learn just as much from making mistakes as we can from somebody who's an expert in the field. So don't hesitate to put in because you don't think that you know everything about the topic. Nobody does, and everyone can always keep learning. I know I kind of left off with the BYOC lab, but I'll also give a shout out to Esri. We have an Esri lab that they go over. Who wants to learn ARC Pro? I know I do. And I know we've had these wonderful webinars here through IACA, but this is a chance to get in person and ask those questions that maybe you haven't been able to figure out yet. Our final track that we offer is our vendor-led track. And these are great opportunities for you to get in, to listen to what they have to say. And for those of you who use those products, take that opportunity to sit in their class, talk to them about their product, talk to them about their software. I can tell you that in years prior, one of my jobs with the conference committee was assisting with all of our vendors. Being able to have the knowledge of what our vendors are providing and what's out there, we can take that back to our department and really, hey, you know what? This product was super cool. Let's get this here. Let's get a trial here. Let's get something here so everyone else in my department can see how awesome it is. We really recommend people going to those vendor-led tracks because they provide a wonderful amount of knowledge. I mean, who better to know the data than the people who are working with it every day, right?
Yeah, it gives you an opportunity to take the issues that you're having to them and get
Yes.
their advice.
Yep.
It is great. And I will add, well, I will say, don't do crystal reports, do SQL.
Well,
but that's me being prejudiced against.
I
crystal
agree
reports,
with
but-
you, but there are several people who still want help with crystal. So,
So you did mention a couple of the technology classes that you're looking for. Is there any topics, maybe not technology based, that is on the targeted list?
we, of course, as we're seeing a nationwide shift to using NIBRs, we're of course looking at those people who found success with NIBRs and how they've reported it and what they're doing there. Nothing is off limits. We've seen submissions in for real-time crime centers. We've seen submissions in for using Google data and using CDRs and all of that wonderful things that we do as analysts. I know I've talked to several different analysts after I presented at the 2019 conference who were like, hey, I didn't know about a floor plan. So maybe we can do that in my agency. And so if you have something like that, that's unique, please put in and present on that. I know a lot of people have stage fright and a lot of people don't want to necessarily speak in front of an audience, but these are your peers and we've all screwed up. We've all messed up. We've all tried something and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Put that on the back burner. And
yeah. Well, I'm laughing because I had one of the worst presentations of all time at the conference years ago. Oh man, I was trying to do a demo on the stage and it was in front of everybody. I think it was at the business meeting.
Oh man.
And, oh my goodness, the presentation didn't work. Laptop ran out of battery. I went up too early because somebody told me to go up early and I interrupted somebody else talking. I mean, and then I had my instant messenger on. So right in the middle of my presentation, somebody from work IM'd me. I mean, it was really bad. So I don't think you can do worse than what I did, in front of just about everybody at the conference a couple years ago. So I have an idea that I want to bring up. Before I do, I will acknowledge that this isn't your decision. And maybe I'll call up Albert Mesa after we're done here and run this past him. But we mentioned the cost of the registration. For IACA members, it's $500. For non-members, it's $575 for registration. So my suggestion would be, there's a lot of other associations out there in law enforcement that didn't have a chance to have a conference this year. They had it in the spring. If you think of IALEA, for instance, is a good example of that. They had theirs canceled in the spring. My suggestion to the conference committee, and I guess this is, before I say this too, is another thing is like this podcast, I'm independent of IACA, so I have no affiliation with them. My suggestion would be, if you're an IALEA member, give the member rate. Invite them over. Say, hey, we understand that your conference got canceled this year. and reach out. Julie Wartell I had on last week, and she said, one of the things she would like to see is to see more officers at the IACA conference. It's another opportunity. We want to see more officers at the training. We're going to give you the membership rate. That's what I would like to see, is reaching across the aisle to some of these different groups, these different associations, to get people that wouldn't normally come to the conference to come to this year's conference.
Well, I can tell you, I think that that's a great idea. Now, the practical applications of that, I'm not sure of. That's, as you said, not my decision. But I agree with you that I think we should reach out across the aisles and get more officers. That's something I was just talking yesterday to one of our detectives about what this conference has. And she was asking, well, could she go? And absolutely, this conference is open to anybody. We have you mentioned the member and the non-member, but we also have a student rate for those students who want to come and get this training. And for students, what a great opportunity for you to network with all of these people that when you graduate, here's people from all across the world that you could reach out to for help with applying for a job and learning about open positions. I will also say our IACA membership fee is, as I've got it up on the website right now, is $25. So for those people who aren't IACA members, it's a very cheap membership for everything you get. And I know you're not affiliated, so I'll do the shameless plug with IACA. The webinar library is unprecedented. Like, it's fantastic. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on and been like, ooh, hey, here's something new I could learn. You have a wide range of people at the tips of your finger to reach out in the directory and be like, I need somebody here and I need somebody there. But what better way to do that than to go to the conference and meet them in person? And that way, when you reach out to them later and you need something from them, you could come back and be like, oh, hey, I need something from California. Let's reach out there.
Do you know the cost of the student rate?
$250 for the student pass. Now, you have to prove student status. We're talking about those students in college, not, oh, well, I'm working full time and I'm going back to school at night. If you're working full time, that's a little different situation. So there are those stipulations. If you have questions, please reach out to Albert Mesa or anybody from registration on the conference committee side of things, and we will get that question answered for you.
Good deal. So just to recap, important dates. Get your presentations in by April 30th. The cost of the conference goes up starting July 16th. Opening ceremonies is August 23rd and runs till the 27th. It's at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, which is only a 10-minute car ride from the McCarran International Airport. So it's pretty close and accessible once you get off the airplane. So come on out. This is exciting. If you've never tried it before, please try your best to come out. We'd love to see you there.
Yes.
Okay. So let's move on to, I want to get your advice on a couple of topics. So I see that you got certified with the Chandler Gilbert Community College.
Yes.
And it's funny that I'm talking to you about both these things because the certification process seems like it's overly complicated and it's difficult because you have universities that have certification, you have associations that have certification, you have states that have certification. And they're all different. They all have different requirements. IALEA has theirs. IACA has theirs. Florida has one. California has one. This community college has one. It seems to me that can we just either have one certification or at least recognize other people's certifications? Like there should be no need to go out and get both an IALEA and IACA certification, I wouldn't think. But maybe I'm wrong on that. What do you think?
I would agree with you. I think that, let me backtrack there. I personally think it would be fantastic if crime analysis as a whole, as a field, as a profession, would be able to reach a point where having the certification matters for your job. And before everyone gets up in arms over that, my agency, and I could be wrong, I'm speaking for my agency, my certifications don't necessarily get me promoted. They don't necessarily get me a pay raise. So really, what do they get? They get some letters after your name, right? When you look at it on paper, that's what happens. However, I'm a huge proponent of going through the certification process wherever you can, because you learn knowledge, you gain experience, and those things matter 100% for your job. Being able to articulate, maybe you have a chief that doesn't necessarily respect your position, and being able to articulate, I have gone through this vigorous process of studying. And for IACA, we have points that you have to earn to even be able to test. Part of that is the years of experience, the presentations that you give. So come present at the conference. Part of that is working in the different law enforcement capacities. It's your education. All of those things give you more than just those letters. All of those things give you a knowledge base that is unprecedented. You can't compete with that. And that's something that's yours that you've earned. I highly recommend to people new incoming who are currently employed to really take a look at getting certified wherever it may be. I can tell you that I'm in the process of studying for our IACA certification. That is a goal of mine, to become a certified member there. But I agree with you. I wish that we could recognize across the board, that you could recognize, okay, here's Alpha Group has their certification process.
Sure.
Now I've gone through all those classes. I could pay the fees and go through with that. I just haven't yet, because my goal has been the IACA one.
I find that fascinating because you're already certified as an analyst, right? And so what's the IACA one going to give you that the one that you already have, it doesn't?
It's going to give me a sense of accomplishment. I've set a goal and I want to go do it. As I said earlier, I am a gold star person. I want to be able to work for something and earn it and achieve that. So for me, it's going to give me the knowledge that I put my mind to something and I accomplished it. Just as an interesting aside there, I started my master's degree a long time ago before my children were born. And I had 3 classes left before getting my master's degree. But I took a break to have my children and wasn't sure what that was going to bring me. So wanted to kind of get settled in with them before I was able to go back and continue, and then changed agencies, changed jobs, and the opportunities that were there that long ago seemed to become farther and farther away as I was just getting back. So I spoke to one of our assistant chiefs here, and he was asking me how come I hadn't completed it yet. It came down to finances, and that's a lot of money at this point in time to spend on something that honestly doesn't necessarily get me something. And my assistant chief kind of sat me down and he's like, you need to change your mindset there, because it gets you so much more than just a degree and just a piece of paper. I agree with that. After speaking to him, he kind of opened my eyes to, yes, it may not give me a pay raise now. It may not do that. But when I go to promote, it'll set me apart. And when I go to, once I retire from this career and move on to something else, having that knowledge base will set you apart. So yes, I'm already a certified analyst through the Chandler Gilbert Community College here. But if I could also have the IACA certification behind my belt and go through with all of this, again, you set a goal and go after it. Make sure that you're doing what you can to get that done.
I get it. Good luck on that.
Thank you.
I understand. Wasn't trying to put you on the spot or anything. I was just curious, but very good. So you have a long list of training here as well that
Yes.
you've taken. Is there a particular training as you look back that sticks out that you might recommend or just really got a lot out of?
IACA conferences. Shameless plug, right? Outside of all of our IACA classes, because I've gone through, like I said, the webinars and all of that, some of the things that I have really learned a lot from internally within Scottsdale, we have this emerging leadership program that is available to anyone within our department. I've really taken a lot from that, and I have loved going through these classes. But outside of Scottsdale, I have loved going through the Alpha Group classes. I thought the criminal investigation class from Alpha Group was amazing. I'm a little bit demented as a person. I have a weird sense of humor, and a lot of people kind of shake their head at me when I start giggling at things. And that class fulfilled that for me. So it was awesome. But other than that, I think one of my favorite classes probably would have been ZXWEXA conference. They just had their first annual WEXA conference. It's the wireless exploitation devices. So it goes over, CDRs and cell phones and what to do with Google data and all of that information. And I think practically in my job, I do cell phone analysis every day. Every day I have somebody else sending me, hey, here's these CDRs. Can you look at this? Can you analyze that? We've started playing a lot with Google data. So I think practical application, that was phenomenal. They had great speakers at that conference. They had, Cy Ray is the owner of ZX, and he was awesome. Being able to hear from him and his company and their mission, he makes it personal and you can tell it's important to him. I loved that.
Let's finish up with your personal interest because you're a baker.
Yes, I am.
So what do you bake?
Oh, I bake cakes. I bake cupcakes. I will do a little bit of everything. So cookies, brownies, all of that sort of stuff. But my 2020 story is that I kind of started my side business. I bake and decorate cakes. I have been baking my entire life, but really got into decorating when my kids were born. As a dispatcher, would sit and on the downtimes would kind of peruse Pinterest and see things that I would be like, oh, I could probably do that. I started doing it more often and for family and friends, and really found out that I had a passion for it. Recently, I have kind of been pushing more of that out, opening myself up to more than family and friends. Within the past year, I have my own Instagram page and Facebook business account, and have started selling my cakes out to public and promoting my own business there. And it's been a lot of fun. Last year, one of the cakes I had made and put out on my accounts got picked up by another baking company as one of the world's most awesome cakes. They do these contests every once in a while. And I woke up to my Facebook blowing up that day with everyone being like, how did you get this? I had no idea that it was even nominated for this. It was a great contest. I was kind of blown away that one of the cakes that I had made got nominated for the world's best cake. This was a worldwide contest and I ended up finishing in second place. So it was pretty cool. I was really excited by that.
Help me frame this a little bit, because when I was growing up, when you said birthday cake, we're talking about a sheet cake, right? And that's maybe you're taking the little, you're just drawing little things on the sheet cake. But my kids nailed it on Netflix. So they know that there's all this thing now where you can build sculptures and get really into characters and all that stuff. So where are you at in between, sheet cake versus these sculptures that you see on HGTV?
So I have done sheet cakes. I'm not a fan. Okay. I do mostly either sculptures or really elaborate tiered cakes. The one that went up for this contest, it was a 3-tiered ASU football cake. And I had football on top that's molded, sculpted football with the texture and all of that. I've done, wine barrels. I've done baseball mitts and softballs and haunted houses and all sorts of cool cakes that I'm pretty proud of. I have 2 boys myself, and I'm a big fan of the MCU and DC and all of that, Batman and Superman all the way. I myself am Wonder Woman. So I've done a lot of those cakes over the years for my kids, a lot of those characters and whatnot. But yeah, so I'm more on the sculpted and the tiered cakes. I watch all those cake shows and I'm more on that side.
And then what's that dough or what's that stuff that begins? I think it begins with an F. What is
fondant.
That? Yes.
That's fondant.
Yes. And you're dealing with that to sculpt all these characters.
Fondant, gum paste, all sorts of other materials, depending on what I'm building at the time. You might throw in, instead of using cake, it might be a Rice Krispie treat or something if it needs to be more structurally sound. Yeah. But yes, covering it all with ganache and fondant. And I can tell you the detectives here are pretty spoiled, because anytime I'm trying a new flavor or bake something for a family, I always come in and here you go, guys, here's my leftovers.
Wow.
So it's been fun.
Man, you are well on your way to your next career.
Why, thank you. Retirement jobs all the way, right?
There you go. So my last question is going back to the beginning when you were thinking about becoming a director. I often ask people that are in the business, producing movies or shows or something like that, do you find yourself when you're watching a movie or show getting back into your classic training and be like, well, geez, that's a horrible angle, what are you doing? Or the lighting's horrible on that, why would you use that lighting? And you're just, for everybody else in the room that's not classically trained, that's obviously not what they're paying attention to, but you being classically trained see things that most of us do not.
Yeah. So what I was in for was actual stage production theater. So a lot of the times the film industry is definitely a different world. But yeah, I will go back, and it's funny to listen to people talk about, oh, hey, here's what the director did. And I'm going, that's not the director's job. Like that's other people who handle that. Or, they talk about, oh, the producer did. And well, so it's really fun. But yeah, you kind of go back every once in a while and reminisce.
Well, our last segment to the show is Words to the World. And that's where I give the guests the last word, and you can promote any idea that you wish. Brittany, what are your words to the world?
My words to the world would be creative. Never stop looking for opportunities where you can be creative. I think it just enriches people as a whole, no matter what you do. And whether it's work related or unwork related, find something that you can make your mark by doing.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with, you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate you being on the show, Brittany. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Of course. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Elder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.